We are gonna reupholster this cute bamboo spinning counter stool in basically 4 easy steps. We're gonna strip off all the fabric, then we are going to make our welt, cut our pieces, sew it back together, and staple it to our stool. So I guess that's actually 5 steps. So let's get started. It's Mimsy here. I teach budget-minded people how to beautify and improve your homes with home decor sewing, upholstery, and DIY so that you can have a sanctuary of a home, a beautiful home on a tight budget. First thing we're going to do is strip this baby. So here's the fabric. I've already got my welt made, and I won't show you how to do the welt because I have separate videos on welt, and I'll link to the welt making videos in the description below. This is the fabric I'm using. It's a vintage kind of a bark cloth fabric, and it's got this bold floral print with the black background, and I've had it in my stash for years, and I just think it's really pretty, and I think it'll wear well on this stool. This is the stool that I sit on every day at my computer when I'm working, editing these videos, so this stool gets a lot of use. I wanted something that is going to hide the wear. Let's strip this baby. So first thing I'm going to do is undo these screws. Oh, there's 3 screws around the edges. And I'll undo these first. This spinning platform has a hole in it so that you can find the screws and take them out. All right, and so these ones are littler screws. Keep some pressure on it so that it'll still turn. Is that it? Nope, there's no screw there. Huh. All right, there's another one. Okay, so there was a screw missing. There should have been 3 screws holding this piece on. So there's the spinny part. Pretty simple. There should have been a screw in each one of these, and now I'll get my pliers and we'll pull the welt off. So I'm going to look for where this is joined, and it's right here. You can see the join right here, and I'll start there. Right into the trash. And I'll go ahead and pull out these staples that are really sticking straight out so that we don't hurt ourselves like I just did right there. All right, let me get my staple puller. Here it is. Best tool in the shop is this staple puller by C.S. Osborne. What I'm doing here is I'm just going to get this up underneath the fabric. I'm not pulling each individual staple. I'm just getting it under the fabric and prying it up. Now, if you do not have this staple puller, that is 100% okay. It's a wonderful tool, but you can totally do this without. I'll show you. A big screwdriver is really nice, and you just get it underneath the fabric. And if it's long, it's better because you have more leverage that way. And actually, this screwdriver is working even better than the staple puller for this because it's so long. It's got really good leverage. Now we can take this off. Okay, set this aside because we're going to use that for patterning. And then I'll quickly just take out all of these staples. So as you can see, when you use the leverage on the fabric, it pulls out a good portion of the staples. So you don't have to be sitting here trying to pry up each individual staple. I'm a big believer in you don't have to pull out every single staple, particularly in a situation like this where you're just working with a piece of plywood. You don't have to pull out every single staple. All right, so let's go to the table and let's cut our fabric. Okay, so the way that we're going to cut our fabric is we're going to use that wooden platform and trace around it. I'm going to use my bobbin in order to create a 1/2 inch seam allowance all the way around that wood platform. So I'm just putting my pencil right in that hole in the center of the bobbin, roll that bobbin around the outside of the wooden platform, and it'll make a nice solid line all the way around that, because you don't want your fabric piece, your top fabric piece, to be bigger than the foam. You want your fabric piece to be slightly smaller than your foam. And there's the nice clear line that we're going to next cut around. So we're just going to cut that out. And the next step is to cut out the boxing, which is that long strip of fabric that goes around the outside edge, that strip there. And my boxing is 4 inches. So I think I cut my strip 5 or 6 inches. You can go a little bit extra on the boxing because you'll have extra fabric to wrap around the bottom of your stool so that you're not struggling to get that fabric around the bottom of the stool. So extra is fine. All right, so the next step is to pin the welt to the top circle. And I need to first cut some tiny little relief snips into the welt so that it will curve around the circle, otherwise it'll just be too taut. So I'm just cutting tiny little snips right up to the seam line, the stitching, but not through the stitching. So I've got to do that all the way around, and then I'll start pinning. Okay, so you start pinning it, and you pin with the welt cord inside and the raw edge towards the edge of the circle, like I'm doing here. Now I'm back to the beginning, and I've got to cut out a piece of the welt cord so that we can overlap the two ends. We'll basically put one end inside of the other and then sew that down so that it's one side of the welt is encased in the other side. So now I'm at my sewing machine. I installed my zipper foot so that I can sew right next to my welt cord. If you have a welt foot, you can obviously use that too. It would probably be better, but the zipper foot works just fine. Alright, and there it is all sewn on. Next up is to sew the boxing piece onto the circle, right on top of the welt. So the boxing piece, I've got to put little relief cuts in that as well, in order to be able to let it lay flat around the circle of the top of the cushion. Okay, now I've got to flip it upside down because we want to put right side to right side, as always in sewing. So I'm going to start the seam in the same spot that I put the seam of the welt. So I'm just laying it right side to right side. I'm going to pin, actually I guess I'm not going to pin, I'm just going to sew it on. So you can pin it there if you're a beginner and feel like you want to do that, or just go ahead and sew it on all the way around the top of the cushion. Okay, so I'm back to the beginning, and now I've got to join those two ends of the boxing piece of fabric. So I left myself a little bit of room there. I didn't stitch all the way around. I left myself a couple inches. So I'm just matching up those two right sides of the boxing, and I'm pinning it straight down, basically perpendicular to the round cushion. So I'm just going to pin straight across there. And then sew that one row of stitching to close up the boxing right next to the welt. Get it in right next to the welt as tight as you can. Be sure to back stitch there so that you for sure have a nice tight seam. Then we are going to trim off that extra bit of fabric. And then we're going to stitch down that little 2-inch section that wasn't secured, and then the top of the cushion is all complete. We can go ahead and fasten this baby to the stool. Alright, so I'm turning it right side out, and I'm just checking right here to see if I sewed close enough into my welt. When you don't have a welt foot, you really have to push in tight with your zipper foot in order to get it close enough to the welt that your stitching doesn't show. So I'm going to take it and I'm going to go back in and sew this a little bit tighter to my welt. Okay, much better. Now it's nice and tight to my welt, and I can take it to my table and fit it on my foam. I went ahead and cut a new piece of dacron to wrap the foam with the dacron, and it's big enough to go over the top and down the sides. So now I'm just turning my cushion cover back inside out so that I can get it centered on the middle of the foam and then push the edges over the foam. Now, if you've got this the proper size, it should be difficult to do this. It'll be hard to turn it over because your foam should be bigger than this. In order to fill out the cover, you want it to be really, really plump, the foam to be really plump and difficult to get into the cover. Okay, and before you even put your cover on, go ahead and mark your boxing where you want it to land on your board underneath, so that your boxing, when you staple it on, your chalk mark can be right against that board so that your boxing is the same dimension all the way around your cushion so that it's nice and neat. All right, so now I'm just lining up that chalk mark with the edge of the wood and stapling it on. So you see what I mean? I'm lining up the chalk with the wood there so that my boxing doesn't get wavy on me. So the sides are all the same dimension all the way around. Otherwise it gets a little bit messy looking if your boxing becomes 2 inches deep on one side and then 3 inches deep on the other. It just looks messy. So staple it on all the way around, and if your cushion cover is really tight, this part will be easy. If your cushion cover is too big, if you made that circle on the top of your cushion too large, you're never going to be able to get that boxing to be flat. You'll have puckers and gathers in your boxing. So if that's the case, go back, take off the circle from the boxing, and make that circle on the top smaller. And then you'll be able to get your cushion on nice and smooth. Otherwise, you're just going to be struggling with gathering and puckering. So take it from me. Okay, fasten it back to your stool, and that's it. That baby's done. Sorry about the quality of the video here. The voiceover is a hot mess. I gotta get used to this silly microphone. And also the beeping in this whole video. It is annoying, but I'm sitting here after Hurricane Milton and we still don't have power. And I'm editing this video by battery backup.